Greetings, I'm Father Jim Kirby. On this edition of If I Should Die Before I Wake, I'd like to introduce to you another group of heroes of mine. They are volunteer soldiers in the city of Kharkiv defending the city against the Russian invasion. But before we get to that, I'd like to mention a few things that are going on with the war in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin recently declared that he would like a complete 3-day truce. But let's keep in mind his last declaration of a 1-day truce over Easter. It took all of a few moments for the air raid sirens to sound in Kyiv as drones were detected in Ukrainian airspace. The Ukrainian military at the front reported constant violations during that 24-hour so-called truce. Regarding this most recent proposed 3-day truce that Vladimir Putin has announced for alleged humanitarian reasons, it should be treated as all the other promises he has made in the past. Vladimir Putin has a long way to go before anyone should take his word on anything. Until he demonstrates real peaceful intentions or is out of power, never trust this man on anything. Vladimir Putin is a liar. He is a terrorist and he is a killer, and he is not to be trusted. To demonstrate Putin's cruelty and duplicity when it comes to peace, recall in the early hours of April 24th when Russia launched a large-scale missile and drone attack on the capital of Kyiv and in at least 8 other regions in Ukraine. In Kyiv, a residential building was struck by a Caliber missile, and as of this recording, 13 civilians were killed and 90 injured, including 12 children. 44 people were hospitalized. Frantic survivors tried to rescue loved ones as the sound of their cell phones could be heard beneath the rubble. Young people gathered at the site hoping and praying that their classmate and friend would be found alive. As of this recording, they have already attended his funeral. Please keep the people of Ukraine in your prayers, especially the hundreds of the most recent victims and their families and their friends. In January of 2023, Alexander Nedobar and his son Max, friends who I have been working with from the Rotary Club Kyiv Sofia, asked me to come along with them on their trip to Kharkiv in order to bring supplies to the volunteer soldiers there. Kharkiv is but 18 miles south of the Russian border and was a pivotal point when the Russian invasion began in February of 2022, as Russian troops tried to surround the second largest city in Ukraine. Kharkiv was under constant shelling, but by May of 2022, the Ukrainian military had driven back Russian forces back across the border into Russia and declared victory in the Battle of Kharkiv. Since then, Kharkiv continues to be bombed by Russian missiles and drones, and because of the proximity to the Russian border, the residents of Kharkiv are hyper alert and know that by the time the air raid sirens sound, it's already too late. When we arrived in Kharkiv, I was introduced to Yulia Pavichenko of the Rotary Club Kharkiv Nadia. Yulia has become a dear friend of mine and another hero in my book. She introduced us to soldiers of the Freikorps Brigade, a volunteer military group charged with defending the city. Volunteer units are not able to receive all the supplies that they need and rely on donations and support from others. I had brought a large supply of tourniquets that I was able to gather and purchase with the help of the generosity of people back home. The Cat 7 tourniquets I'm able to buy here in the United States are of a superior quality compared to what the soldiers are able to get in Ukraine. The inferior tourniquets break at critical moments, putting the wounded soldiers' lives in jeopardy. The Cat 7 tourniquets that we're able to buy and I'm able to bring save lives, period. We delivered the supplies to 3 soldiers of the brigade who were on leave. I apologize for concealing their faces for security purposes. They were impressive men, battle-hardened, strong, and determined. After the exchange of supplies, we sat down with them just to talk. One of the soldiers, a drone pilot who spoke very good English, was curious to know the American feelings about Ukraine and the war. At the time, the war was almost a year old, and I told him that people were supportive of Ukraine, and at the time, our country was sending military aid packages to support Ukraine. We talked about the development of drone warfare, and even then, the developments in technique and sophistication were impressive. With great pride, they showed me videos of their missions and their skills as pilots. They joked that their office was usually crouched in some corner of a bombed-out building or in a trench in some field. Those times with the soldiers are moments I will never forget. Since then, I have traveled to Kharkiv on each of my following missions, bringing supplies and raised funds for soldiers and their efforts. The soldiers are always grateful and eager to show me what they can of their operations. Occasionally there are threats of drones in the area, but I always feel safe with the soldiers. It is an honor to be with them. On that first trip with Max and Alexander, we were shown the effects of the war, the bombed-out buildings and homes in Kharkiv. We were taken to School 134, the site of one of the most pivotal battles of the war in that part of the country. School 134 was known for its architecture and its educational history and status. It had survived the bombings of World War II. But in February of 2022, an elite intelligence squad of Russia's Spetsnaz Special Forces was making a last stand in the Battle of Kharkiv. They took over the school preparing for an operation, expecting little resistance from the Ukrainian forces and counting on the operation to be completed in 3 days. However, they encountered a determined Ukrainian force, leading to intense fighting, resulting in near total destruction of that Russian elite unit. It is a place of great pride for the Ukrainians of Kharkiv. I was able to return there the next year as other soldiers wanted me to see it again. It was an honor to be with them at School 134. Last January, because of the tremendous support and generosity from the people of St. Anne's Parish in Logan and the people of St. Patrick's Parish in Missouri Valley and a whole host of other supporters, the Freikorps Brigade honored me with their brigade flag and a Russian tin cup they had taken from a captured Russian soldier. They will always be treasured possessions of mine. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of If I Should Die Before I Wake. Next time, I will introduce to you another group of Ukrainian heroes fighting to defend freedom, not just for Ukraine, but for freedom of people throughout the world. If you would like to support me in my mission to support Ukraine, please scan this QR code or email me at jkirby1@me.com. And always remember, Slava Ukraini, Heroam Slava. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.